Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for waiting. We would now like to continue boarding for all economy class customers.
Hello once again, everyone. Welcome to the February edition of the Airshow Podcast. In February, we start to look forward to spring and better flying weather, or at least more consistent flying weather. This winter has been unique, to say the least. In this edition of the Air Show, we have some interesting segments coming up. We're going to be joined by an IATPL student, Jocelyn Theriault. We're also going to be talking about some upcoming events at the Brampton Flying Club. And of course, we'll have some of our usual segments, what's happening in Canadian aviation, and our Meet the Staff Member segment. And this month it's going to be with Nancy Soldo. Nancy and her family have a long history with the Brampton Flying Club, and we're going to talk to her a little bit about that, as well as her position here. And speaking of history, we have a great facility here. The Great War Flying Museum is here at the Brampton-Caledon Airport, and they have lots of really neat things to see and do, and they are typically open 11 to 4 from Saturday and Sunday, and on statutory holidays from Victoria Day long weekend and in May through Labor Day in the summer. Admission is $5 per adult, and for children 12 and under, that's free. And there is a family admission fee of $20 for 2 adults and related children 13 to 18 years old. And conditions permitting, aircraft will be flown on those days that the museum is open. It really is a treat to see these aircraft flying, so be sure to drop by and say hello to the guys who work really hard to keep these aircraft in the sky. And this month we have a special guest coming to discuss an amazing project that he's been working on for some time. Neil Mont is a member here at the Brampton Flight Center, and he has a unique project that he's been working on for some time, and he's going to tell us all about that. The Brampton Flight Center Social Committee has an event coming up, and that event is going to happen on Thursday, February 22nd at 6 p.m. at the BFC Restaurant Cafe. And the subject for that particular evening is going to be discussing aviation safety and accident investigation. The speaker is going to be Dave Fisher. Chili will start at 6 p.m. and the actual presentation will start at 7, so be sure to join us that evening. Should be a very interesting topic and conversation with Dave. Today we're going to be talking to one of our students in the IATPL program, and that student would be Jocelyn Theriault. So thank you for joining us today, Jocelyn. I appreciate you coming in to join us on our third podcast, the February podcast. So we just want to talk to you a little bit today about your career in aviation, why you're here, and that sort of thing. The thing I like about doing these interviews is hearing the stories of how people came to be interested in aviation and being a pilot in particular, obviously. So tell us about how you got to be here at the Brampton Flight Center. Obviously, it probably didn't start out career-wise that way.
Well, thanks for having me, Richard. I think the reason I got into aviation in particular was because I wanted to travel. I grew up in a small village in Nova Scotia and didn't get to do a lot of that when I was younger. And I went to university thinking I was going to become a doctor, not because I loved medicine. I just figured it was a good job and I was good at sciences, so why not? But I wasn't super passionate about it. And I was like, okay, why do I want a good career? And I was like, I want to be able to travel. So the summer of my second year of university, I was working at a career resource center just as like a student intern, and a brochure came across my desk for a flight attendant college. And it was literally that day I was like, oh, that sounds fun. And I applied to a few airlines just to see what happened. And I ended up getting accepted. And dropped out of university after second year and moved to Toronto, which was very scary. Toronto was never on my radar. Had always thought about Vancouver maybe because, it's the opposite coast. I love being by the ocean, but Toronto was very new and kind of scary for someone who grew up in a town with like 900 people. But I did it, and that was Air Canada Rouge. And I was very fortunate to start with them in the beginning of 2014, when they were only 6 months past their launch. So my seniority was very great. And I got to do a lot of travel, and I ended up doing that for 8 years. It was supposed to be a year off of university, wow. And it ended up being 8 years. But within that time, I got to, my travel bug, I did everything I wanted to do there, but I actually fell in love with the industry, not just travel, but aviation. And that's kind of how I ended up.
So you decided you wanted to go from the back of the plane to the front of the plane.
Exactly.
All of a sudden.
Yeah.
Yeah, I find it interesting that you had no intention of going into aviation at the beginning of, or I guess the end or beginning of your schooling.
No.
To be a doctor is quite a
big switch.
A 180 from being a pilot, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, we're glad you did make it here, obviously. So you got to the point where you were a flight attendant, and now you at some point must have decided, okay, well, I enjoy traveling, as you say.
Yeah.
And you obviously get a lot of that as a flight attendant. But there must have been something else that has moved you to want to be now flying airplanes. It's a big difference. I mean, we have a lot of people who are flight attendants for all their lives, a wonderful career, and have no interest whatsoever in moving to the front of the airplane. So what was it that made you go in that direction?
Yeah. For me, it kind of just felt like the next step. Also, too, like wanting to go into med school and everything originally, I kind of felt a little disappointed in myself that I didn't finish my university degree or anything like that. So I was like, I want to do something more. So I think it was 2017. I actually went back to university. I finished my degree at U of T, and then the pandemic happened. And I was forced into another job to explore, my academic studies and everything, something in healthcare. And I really didn't enjoy myself. I hated the desk job. I was used to my flight attendant schedule, and also it was remote work too. So being at home 24/7 just was something I wasn't used to at all. And I did it for 6 months and hated it. So that kind of killed that idea of, okay, I'm not going to med school. I can't do that anymore, but I still want to be in aviation, but I want to progress somehow. And I had gone from being a flight attendant to an in-charge flight attendant. And I felt that was kind of the ceiling in that role. And I thought about maybe going into management at the airline, but ultimately I wanted to still be in the air. And I was like, well, the only thing else I can do up here is to fly the plane. Next
logical step, right?
Yeah. So
was your family supportive of this change of going from being potentially a doctor to a pilot?
Yeah, they surprisingly were. I think coming from a small town, I know just me moving to Toronto, regardless of whatever job I was doing, was a really big thing for them. So they were really proud of me as a flight attendant. And, I always talked about, again, the seniority and how I can travel and get whatever flights I want. So when I decided I wanted to be a pilot, they were actually quite surprised. They're like, you're quite comfortable now. Right. Are you sure you want to do this? And it's a lot of, it's financially a lot of money. And what if it doesn't work out? The aviation industry is up and down all the time. But when I decided to actually do it, they were quite supportive.
They were there for you. That's great. Not everybody, unfortunately, has that support.
Yeah.
So it's good that you did, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So Jocelyn, you're coming near to the end of your program here, the IATPL program. So now it's time to get to the real hard work, which is to get out there and find a job and obviously the career you've chosen. So what are your short-term and long-term goals in aviation? I always ask people, what do you want to fly at the end of the day? When you get further down into your career in terms of aircraft, everybody has a favorite, it seems. We have some big Airbus fans here. But we also have people who are, go Boeing or go home kind of fans. So, and we have some others in there as well. Some people I've talked to actually like flying props. So for you, let's talk about what your intentions are.
Yeah. So I guess the reason I chose this program at Brampton anyway was because it was a 20-month accelerated IATPL program, meaning airline transport pilot license. So I have to say my ultimate career goals is to end up back at an airline someday. Spending so many years as a flight attendant, I always dreamed of, going back to an airline in the pilot capacity and, seeing my flight attendant friends that are there and being able to kind of live our commercial airline life again together with me in the flight deck. So that's what I envision for my ultimate future. Flying a wide body aircraft internationally would be absolutely awesome. I love that as my flight attendant job, and I think I would enjoy doing it as a pilot as well. I don't know if I have a particular favorite plane. I used to really like the 787 Dreamliner as a flight attendant, but I have no idea what it's like to fly. With being in the Brampton program, we've been doing our training with the Sunwing standard operating procedures on the Boeing 737. And that's been a really good experience so far. So maybe I am a Boeing lover.
Maybe you're a Boeing lady after all.
So far, so good. It's been really fun. And I guess short-term goals with this program, there's also potential for opportunities with certain airlines, depending on how we perform within the simulator evaluations and throughout our program. So a few of those that I'm sure we've all heard about before is the Jazz Pathways program that allow students to go in as first officers with pretty low time hours. Sunwing also just announced that they're looking into our top graduates, and then Porter once we build a little bit more. So being able to go to one of those airlines right out of school would be a dream come true. And then progression into a wide body someday, or just stay there if I like it. We'll see how it goes after I graduate and get into an actual role. And if something like that doesn't work out for me, that's okay too. I actually just received a $5,000 scholarship from Women in Aviation International.
That's awesome. I didn't know that.
Yeah,
cool.
And it's to complete an instructor rating. So
there are some options.
There are some options, and I always kind of considered that when I was a flight attendant. I regretted not going into the training department. So it's always kind of been something I've wanted to do, instructing. So maybe that would be a good
start,
option for
potentially.
me too.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of different routes into the industry. Have you ever thought about doing the Northern experience?
Yes, I've thought about it. It's a little different because I am married, so I have to consider my husband into the equation and whether he would want to move to Yellowknife or somewhere else. Maybe not. However, he is from Edmonton, Alberta, so
he's used to cold.
That's pretty north, and I think if I decided to go north, it would be within the northern, western side of Canada, and he would be happy moving home to Edmonton. So yeah, maybe.
So that's a possibility as well. Yeah. There are so many options now. The industry growth is amazing. In the last few years, we seem to be in one of those cycles where the demand for pilots is just unending. I was reading an article on Canadian Aviation News the other day that they are just screaming for pilots at Jazz. I have a friend who works at Jazz, and he's telling me every day, get people to apply because they're just running out of pilots and they're canceling flights.
Yeah.
Due to that.
Yeah.
And Porter is opening up new routes as well. They've got a route opening up to LAX shortly.
I saw that.
So lots of opportunities for sure.
Absolutely. I hope it keeps going that way. I mean, that's what everyone keeps telling me when I thought I was crazy becoming a pilot. They were like, "Oh, it's the best time to do it." So, fingers crossed.
All of my pilot friends who are in the airlines are telling me it's a long-term cycle now.
Good.
And it's
Awesome.
not going to end anytime soon.
Nice.
The demand is high. So, Jocelyn, you're a female. You have decided to go into aviation as a career. We've noticed over many, many years that there are fewer female pilots. especially in the commercial airline industry and pilots in general, I think. Why do you think that is? And do you think it's harder for a woman to get into this industry than a man?
I think traditionally, absolutely, it was like basically unheard of for women to get into the industry, especially as pilots. From what I've experienced, it was always viewed as, women, it's a bad job for a woman because they need to be home and raising their children or what have you. But again, my experience as a flight attendant that I always come back to is like that is a predominantly female role. Most people that do that job are female, and it's the same schedule as a pilot. And I'm like, well, if we can be flight attendants, why can't we be pilots? If anything, pilots get more days off because they have stricter fatigue rules. The only thing with the role, and especially, flying internationally and things, is if you're in the air, you're gone, like your phone's off or anything. And I can understand that is something that would be difficult for someone who has a child. You just have to have a good support system to make sure you have someone taking care of them that day. But overall, I would say women have more days off. So I don't think that's an excuse as to why women shouldn't be pilots or in aviation in general. Experience so far in my pilot training has been positive, and that was because I had one instructor here at the Brampton Flight Center who introduced me to a lot of women in aviation groups and organizations. And they are very supportive, and you get to find a lot of other women who are in the same situation as you. And the groups tend to range from women who are captains at Air Canada down to people who just completed their first solo. So you meet people from, top to bottom in their training or careers. So that's really nice. That being said, not everyone gets that experience, and it's sometimes hard to figure out where to find those communities. And when you step into a room as a woman and you're the only one out of 40 guy pilots, it can be really intimidating. And I know before I came to Brampton, I went to a few other flight schools just to check in and ask about their programs and stuff. And I have to say it didn't feel very inviting because it was a lot of guys, joking around behind the desk. And I didn't feel comfortable there as a woman. And I feel like just that experience alone could deter a lot of females from doing this. If I would have let that experience that day stop me when it was just
you may have said, no, I'm not going to do this.
Exactly.
I'm going to stick with being a flight attendant.
Yeah.
I don't need to get into this kind of situation.
Yeah. So I think you just kind of have to be strong and push through. But the industry is changing. And I know a lot of airlines, higher, mainline commercial carriers are trying to make a point of hiring more female pilots. And it's slowly happening. I know the numbers are still ridiculously low, maybe 5 to 10%, depending on the airline.
It's a very small percentage.
Yeah.
Can you recommend any kind of organizations that you're aware of or that you've become a part of that are helpful to potential female pilots?
Absolutely. Yeah. So one big one is Women in Aviation International. They're based in the US, but they have chapters across the world. I'm the event chair for the Upper Canada chapter here in Toronto. And it's an absolutely amazing experience. The current president, Stacey Jackson, she's a pilot at WestJet and is just so nice and always making sure all the members are, informed of what's going on in the industry. We get together, we have a good time, and then also there for support, whether it's resume writing or interview prep, stuff like that. So it's just a really good organization. Another one is the 99s for scholarships and things like that for female members, but also they're more general aviation focused. So if you maybe you don't want this as a career, but you really want to learn to fly and maybe buy your own plane someday, that's a really great organization to meet other women like that. And then there's also Elevate, which is a organization that was started in Edmonton, Alberta, who now has a learning center for people in aviation of all different jobs, whether it's ATC, piloting, that help people progress through their careers with different there's like galas and just different events that they host all throughout the year. And they also offer bursaries and scholarships as well. I just received one this fall. So
that's fantastic.
Nice.
Actually, it's great that you mentioned all of those organizations. Some of them I didn't even know about.
Yeah.
I knew about the 99s and the Women in Aviation. But some of the others you mentioned, definitely it's good that there are so many avenues out there that women can go to learn more about the industry, or if they're involved in the industry or getting involved in the industry.
Yeah.
So I only have a couple of more quick questions for you today. So you're here at Brampton. How the heck did that happen?
So I think I ended up in Brampton. The biggest reason was trying to find a fast program. Again, I said I spent 8 years as a flight attendant. It was kind of a career change. I was getting to my late 20s. Not that that's ancient or anything, but I was like, if I'm going to do this, I want to do it now.
Do it now, yeah.
Yeah. So the 20-month program was very appealing. The idea that they were saying we'll get you from zero to airline ready in 20 months, that was absolutely awesome. And also the proximity to Toronto. I live downtown by Billy Bishop and I didn't feel like moving. So this was one of the closest airports. But I could have went to the island. I chose this school in particular for this structured program instead of self-paced, just because that's what I needed for me. And then also there was it just seemed like Brampton was quite well known in the area. And when I was at Rouge and I was talking to pilots that I was working with there, they recommended it. So I thought it was a good idea to give it a try, and I'm glad I did.
And we're glad that you're here.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So one last question. You are, as I said earlier, coming to the end of the IATPL program. Overall, what did you think of the program? We know there are always issues as we go through, and some of those issues could be individual issues. Others are planning issues. Certainly weather has been a challenge over the last 6 months or so. Is there anything you think we could do better?
Honestly, my program, it's been quite positive for me. You know, one of the biggest issues I know some of my classmates have had is ever-changing instructors, but that is based on the fact that the industry is growing and instructors are getting hauled out of here as fast as they get hired because they're going to airlines, which is negative for the student, but very positive for the industry as a whole. So that's something hard to navigate, and I don't really know what the solution to that is. So that would be one. And, you know, just aircraft availability. Again, it seems like there's a huge interest in people becoming pilots. So if you don't have a booking and all of a sudden it's a beautiful day, it's not like you can just walk in and grab a plane, which is sometimes difficult, especially in the 20-month program where we have very strict deadlines to meet milestones. And it's like, okay, you need to get your X amount of cross countries done by this date. If there's no planes available, sometimes that made it a little bit difficult. But as far as the in-class training, that was absolutely amazing. The partnership with AeroCourse, going through the advanced courses like my IFR and the ATPL ground schools, those were very well done. And I learned a lot. So
excellent. Yeah. Well, thank you for joining us today, Jocelyn. It's been very insightful talking to you, and we've learned a lot about you and how you came to be at the Brampton Flight Center. So thanks again, and good luck with your career now and in the future.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. And now for a little bit of Brampton Flight Center and Flying Club news. This notification is mainly meant for our staff, and it's regarding the upcoming Wings Banquet. Our Wings Banquet on Sunday, April 14th, 2024 will look a little different this year. There will be no sit-down dinner, but rather an afternoon affair commencing at 13:30 and ending at around 17:30. Because it is during the afternoon, BFC will not be closing, but will be operating on its regular schedule. And we'd like to welcome all of the new instructors that are starting up with us in the near future here. We want to wish you all the best with your endeavors here at the Brampton Flight Center, and I'm sure all of you will be successful. Whether you're just visiting our airport or are a member here or a student, don't forget to stop by our fantastic restaurant. They have some great meals available, and where else can you go, honestly, and watch airplanes take off and land all day? Our restaurant hours are from 8 a.m. till 3 p.m., 7 days a week. And you can also book a reservation there for a group or a party. And you can also reserve the restaurant for a special event you may be having, like a birthday party or some other type of event. In this segment of the podcast, we were fortunate enough to have an interesting conversation with Mr. Neil Mond. Neil is a longtime fixture here at the Brampton Flight Center, Brampton Flying Club. He's an instructor, but as well, he is an aircraft owner, and it's the aircraft that we've decided that would be an interesting topic to discuss with him today. So, good morning, Neil. Thank you for joining us on the Brampton Flight Center Airshow podcast this morning.
Morning,
it's
Richard.
An early morning. And as I said earlier, we brought you here today to discuss a really interesting project that you're working on for a little while now. But also, I think we want to know a little bit more about Neil. Certainly how you got started in aviation, when you got started in aviation, and we'll work our way up to this monumental project that you've taken on for yourself.
4 years old. I lived just a stone's throw from the Moncton Airport. And I had gliders and U-control model. Played with them when I was a little older. And I literally, we would sneak into the hangar at the Moncton Flying Club and look at airplanes as 8, 10-year-old kids. Things were different back then.
A little bit, yes.
Yeah. So we did those things, and I grew up and got into my teens, still always looking and playing with airplanes, and I was in Scouts, the Scout leader left, and a lot of the people quit, and I joined the Air Cadets.
So you got your start in Air Cadets.
Yeah, 4 years I was with the Air Cadets, and on the 4th year I won a flying scholarship. I learned to fly for 6 weeks in the summer, 1969. Then I've been flying off and on ever since. Built one airplane, but my dream growing up was to get a float rating, so I did. And I wanted an airplane that could land on the water, and this one fell in my lap.
Right.
I was looking for a project to build, and there was Vollmer Sportsmen and Anderson Kingfishers and stuff like that, but just didn't quite appeal to me. And then I was looking around on the internet 5 years ago, and I saw this thing, and it was in Shelburne. And I went up and met the gentleman who used to be a mechanic here at the Brampton Flying Club, and everybody knew about him when I talked to other people here. And he gave me the airplane for what I consider as a song.
Right.
And the workmanship on it was way beyond what I was expecting, because his hobby is woodworking. So him and his father worked on this airplane for a lot of years, and they just ran out of steam. So I've been working on it for 5 years. I took everything off of it one thing at a time to make sure there was no corrosion or the bolts were okay, and I literally have replaced every bolt in the airplane and put everything back on. Everything was recoated with new paint and stuff like that. And the gentleman who did the original inspection on this airplane, I knew, Max Say. And one of Mac's comments was, great workmanship, no deficiencies. So when somebody like Max, who I knew and respected, says that, I knew I had a good project.
Yeah, that's something you definitely want to hear.
Yeah.
So let's go back a bit. So you started work on this aircraft.
Yep.
You have obviously an immense amount of time into it so far.
Yep.
First of all, let's tell everybody, what is the aircraft?
The airplane is an Osprey 2, and it's an amphibian, and it's made out of wood as primary structure. It has a box spar. It's pusher configuration. And like most water aircraft, if I get 100 miles an hour out of it, I'll be happy.
Right.
It has seats 2, has range for about 4 hours flying time, and I was hoping to put auxiliary gas tanks in it. So when I bought the project, the auxiliary gas tanks already were being utilized or being put into the airplane. All I had to do was rivet up the tanks
Oh,
and
okay.
install them. And there was a mod came out to move the gas from the fuselage to the wings. That was already put into this project. A lot of the work that was, shall we say, that I wanted to have was already completed. So there was a lot of work left to do, but a good portion of what I considered the hard stuff was done. Welding was done. Seats are there. The instrument pod is in with the instruments in it. So now I have, at this point, I've done all the fiberglass work. I've covered the wings with fabric, the control surfaces with fabric, and I'm starting on the electrics and the fuel, and the engine is just about completely overhauled now, and that should be coming back next month.
Right. So you sent it away to do that.
No, I took it to Beaton to a friend of mine.
Oh, okay.
Larry Kosisko, who used to be the mechanic at Levens Brothers,
Right.
and Terry Cleland. Both of them are doing their doctoring to the engine on top of the normal overhaul. I'm getting a tuned exhaust, injection, polished ports. What else? We're going to put an electronic ignition on it. It has high compression pistons and brand new cylinders, because the ones that were on it had cracks around the spark plug holes. They're superior cylinders, and they always, at the second overhaul, they have cracks around the spark plugs.
Right.
So it was almost the same price to repair them as it was to buy new. So we bought new. And the new ones come with the pistons and everything as well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's always good. So the people that had the plane before you, did they fly it a lot, or
It's never flown.
It's never actually been
This
in
is
the
a brand
air.
new airplane.
Oh wow! So they got this
Never seen the sky.
aircraft, and it's never left the ground.
No, well, they didn't get it. They started it right from the basic
Oh, they
structure.
built it from scratch.
Alan and his father literally
okay.
cut the wood and
Wow!
made the ribs and did everything. There is no kit. This is all handmade.
This is all handmade from the beginning.
So all what I consider the hard work, the skills that I didn't have at that time, have all been taken care of by them.
Well, obviously, you've probably acquired some of those skills by now.
Yes, I had to replace 2 pieces of plywood. One had water stain on it, and I tried to take out the water stain. And when I went through the first layer of wood on the plywood, I said, okay, we got to replace this.
Yeah.
So I learned to do scarf joints. It took me 3 pieces of wood to do this, and about $600.
Relatively cheap in aviation
Well,
terms.
I was lucky enough that I got 3 pieces of plywood with the airplane, but that's what they're worth, $200
Right.
a crack. So I did my first scarf joint, wasn't good. I did my second scarf joint, and I was a ½ inch too short. The third one, I made it ½ an inch longer, and then trimmed it back till I knew it fit exactly in place, and then I glued it in place. And when I had the airplane inspected, the inspector asked me where I did the scarf joint because he couldn't see it. So he said to me, if you can do that kind of work, Neil, you're as good as the people who built the plane. And I said, I'm not that good, but I'm trying. No, he said, I've built one airplane and rebuilt 2 wooden airplanes. He said, that's one reason why I inspect wooden airplanes. So, and he's also referred people to me that I've trained as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's
So
interesting.
I've got to fly an RV-9A because of him. He recommended me. So
Right.
a guy gave me a brand new airplane and said, test fly it for me.
It's interesting that people take on a project like
Oh,
this.
yes.
And not every pilot obviously does something like this. You know, a lot of people buy their planes, they fly their planes, they're happy. You decided to make your own.
I enjoy building as much as I do flying.
And you built before, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So this is not your first rodeo.
No, I built one and I rebuilt another one.
And you rebuilt. So this one obviously probably had some learning curves to it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, as
I'm
you
still
went along.
learning.
Yeah, as you go along,
Yes.
you run into problems and solve those problems.
Well, I also talked to a lot of people in the club who have built airplanes, particularly when I have problems, how to resolve them. I don't know everything, but there's somebody in the club who knows how to do something.
Yeah, and that's the great thing about this environment, this
Yes,
community
very
that
much
we
so.
have here is there is a wealth of knowledge out there that if you get stuck on something, somebody has either done it before or knows somebody who has.
Very true.
So you
Very
can kind of go back to that and find help in that
No one
way.
does it all by themselves.
No, for sure. Not a project. Well, we will be actually showing some pictures of your project on this particular podcast as we go along and show some of the progress. So the big question is, Neil, when is this bird going to fly for the first time?
As I tell everybody, it'll fly Monday.
Which Monday? That's the
Which
question.
year?
Right? Which year
Monday?
and Monday?
I'm trying to have everything finished, hopefully, by the end of this year.
Right.
So that I can have it ready to fly the following spring. If I get it done sooner than that, that'll be fine. But whatever you plan for, double it and you'll be close.
Yeah, that's the goal time for you, right?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes, very much.
For sure. So certainly, Neil, we look forward to seeing this project and seeing this bird fly for the first time. That would be really cool. I want to go for a ride,
Oh, yes.
just so you know.
And land on the water.
And land on the water, yes, absolutely.
And the next thing is to take off from the water.
And take off from the water, yeah. That's key to getting back up, right?
Yep.
So every year we have a day here we call Airport Day. It used to be called something else. But are you ever thinking of maybe displaying this work of art?
When the test flying period is off and I know that it's finalized and I'm happy with the airplane, then I will probably
you'll
display it a little bit.
Display a little bit, yeah. Are you a member of the RAA?
I am one of the directors of the RA.
Well, there you go. That's interesting as well. Maybe we'll talk to you about that sometime as well. Because we have a lot of new people coming in who've shown interest in RAA and had a gentleman actually in the airport yesterday looking to contact RAA.
Yep.
Anyway, thank you, Neil, for coming in today. I appreciate it. Really interesting project. I'm sure everybody looks forward to seeing it. I certainly do. We've talked about it for the last number of years.
That's right.
Just at the
average
table, and
build time is 10 years.
that's a good amount of time.
Yes.
For sure.
Because it's part-time.
Exactly. I mean, you're working on it on your own time.
That's right.
And certainly we appreciate that you have taken on a project like this. It's nice to see these type of aircraft. They're not a usual thing you see in the sky.
No.
And look forward to seeing it go.
Yes, so am I.
Thank you. I bet you are. Thank you, Neil, for coming in today. Have a great week, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Stay safe.
Thank you. And that was Neil Mont with his exciting Osprey project. If you're looking for more information on the project, you can certainly contact Neil, and I'm sure he'd be happy to talk to you about the project. And now a little bit of Canadian aviation news. This is regarding ultralights in Canada and a notification or a proposed notification from Transport Canada. Transport Canada has issued a notice of proposed amendment to the CARS that would change the definition of ultralight airplanes. According to Transport Canada, the proposed change would increase clarity and improve enforceability, and receive or appeal obsolete or outdated information. The Ultralight Pilots Association, the UPAC, objects to the proposals, and on January 30th, they submitted a letter to Transport in response. This would likely negatively impact the ultralight community by affecting ultralight pilots' access to airplanes that meet the ultralight gross weight and stall speed criteria, but which are not registered as ultralights, was the response by UPAC's Board of Directors. UPAC states that the change in CAR Part 2 aircraft registration would effectively disenfranchise those pilots who have been safely operating their aircraft according to CAR 401.25, which under that CAR, the holder of the permit ultralight airplane may fly under day VFR, A, act as pilot in command of an ultralight airplane, some for more than 30 years. The current situation allows ultralight pilots to fly the aircraft that meet gross weight and stall speed limitations of the ultralight aircraft regardless of whether they bear registration letters C-XXX, or the standard aircraft registration letters C-FXXX or C-GXXX. So we'll be definitely watching that situation to see how it turns out for ultralight pilots. And here's an interesting little story. We have some pilots who are actually ferrying turtles around. It's called the Turtle Taxi. Apparently, some volunteer conservationists across southern Ontario had located a cluster of injured turtles that needed emergency veterinary care at the Ontario Turtle Conservation Centre, and that's in Peterborough, Ontario. In minutes, a 9/11 style network of animal ambulance pilots and drivers sprang into action. One pilot, Wayne Harvey, saw emails arrive on his computer in St. Thomas, and he went straight into action and volunteered his Cessna 172 Skyhawk on basically a milk run of getting these turtles to the veterinary care that was required for them. Land-based turtle taxis carried the sheltered lizards in Rubbermaid containers to airports in Kincardine, London, Guelph, and Brampton that day, and got those turtles off to where they needed to be. We have an amazingly strong aviation community here in Ontario, and it's wonderful to see pilots helping out in such a really interesting and cool way. And just a quick reminder to all you folks out there who happen to own a drone, you are required under Transport Canada regulations to have either an advanced or basic certificate. And that depends on the weight of your drone, up to 25 kilograms. You are required to have either of those two certificates I just mentioned. Or if you have a sub 250 gram drone, then you do not require a certificate. However, you are required to still follow all the rules and regulations set forth by Transport Canada. And we here at the Brampton Flight Centre do offer an advanced certificate program, which is a preparatory course for the exam. We also do flight reviews here for the second part of the advanced exam requirements. And you can certainly contact me here at the airport at 905-838-1400, extension 214 for further information on those programs. We also offer those programs as well as flight reviews in our northern territories here of Ontario, Sudbury and Timmins, and all up and through that area. We can accommodate you as well for flight reviews and the advanced program certificate class. And now our Meet the Staff Member segment. Today we are joined by Nancy Soldo. Nancy has been with the Brampton Flying Club for some time, and we're going to talk to her today about her position here and a little bit about her family history here at the Brampton Flight Centre. So thank you for coming in today, Nancy. I really appreciate it. This is our February edition of the podcast. This will be our third one, so we hope everybody is tuning in. If you're not, we can certainly make sure you get the links to the proper Spotify and our YouTube sites. So, Nancy, you've been with the Brampton Flying Club for a while. You have certainly a family history here. Mm-hmm. Tell us a little bit about that.
When I was a kid, my dad was striving to be an airline pilot. So he was flying at the Brampton Flying Club when we were kids. I remember coming into the lounge and waiting for him. And there was I remember when I first came here to do my private pilot license, there was a familiar smell of when I was a kid that took me back.
Right.
Which was really cool. But he tried, but that was a very different time in aviation where you had to take good 10 years before you got to the airlines. So having 3 kids, and instructors they were making very little money, a lot less money then. And so he just couldn't do it. But he maintained his license. So he's still flying, just never went into the airlines.
Yeah. A lot of people now have so much more opportunity than they did back then. The aviation industry has changed, and the demand for pilots is there, and it's increasing all the time. We've talked to others about that, and I know people at Jazz, Air Canada, and they're saying, Richard, you know anybody, really, like, tell them to apply as soon as
Even
possible.
when I started my license, it was a different industry. Like you still had to go either up north for a few years before you could apply the airlines.
Yeah,
and
that's true.
yeah,
That's all changed.
Yeah, and like I remember instructors when I first started working here were here for like 5 years.
Yeah, exactly.
Before they moved
now the
on.
turnover is so much higher.
Yeah.
I mean, you look and there's new people all the time
All the
coming
time.
in. People that you've known for a short time going quickly,
Yeah,
getting
exactly.
jobs at the airlines, right? So they really are lucky that they have
Good
come
time.
into it at this, this point in time,
Yeah.
because otherwise, like you said, I remember way back when you had to, long before you, that you needed a university degree to become an airline pilot.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I thought that's more now. I thought
No,
I guess
no.
not now, but
Not now, no.
Oh, that's
I mean,
interesting.
Today, high school will do it. Back then, they wanted a university degree with the sciences and mathematics, and things have
well,
changed
see,
a
that's
lot.
the funny thing. That's what I was told as a kid.
Oh, really?
And that's what made me not going
Kind
to
of veer off that career,
yeah,
right?
needing the mathematics.
But
and
you
all.
certainly ended up still in the aviation industry, right?
By chance, really.
Yeah, it was your family, as we said, had a history here. You have a private pilot's license. When did you get that?
I finished my private pilot license in 2011. I finished with my written. That kind of took a while.
Yeah.
But the only reason I was able to get my private license was because my dad ended up buying a 152. And that saved costs a lot. Like
Right.
I had always, in high school, I wanted to be an airline pilot. I looked into it, then got the information from what the universities needed and
Right.
veered towards a different area of study. But I always wanted to get my license. Being in the sky was something that I just wanted to do. And so he got the airplane. I knew it saved my costs quite a bit. And then I was able to get my private.
So you really did at one point have thoughts toward a commercial aviation career.
I did.
Did you feel that and I've talked to a few female pilots here and did some interviews with them. Did you feel that it would be difficult for you back then to get in as a commercial pilot?
As a female?
Yeah.
The thought didn't really cross my mind.
Really? Okay.
Only because I didn't think of that part of it. I think maybe once I would get into it, I've heard of the struggles that some people have
Right.
gone through. Maybe I would have felt that way. But when I first thought of the idea that I wanted to be an airline pilot, I really just thought of how to get there.
Right.
So I went, and then it kind of got stopped once I learned what I needed to do.
Yeah.
Because math wasn't my strong suit. So, I went to my guidance counselor and they were like, oh, you need this, and grade 12 math. I was like, I don't think this is happening. And then, after coming here and learning how possible it was without all of that, I was surprised. But seeing as how I've already finished a university degree, I had no interest in starting school basically
Just didn't
all
want to go
over
back
again.
through all that again, right? Yeah, no, I don't blame you. It's not for everyone. There's lots of people who have different, get into different aspects of aviation. Everything from where you are in administration
Right.
here at the Brampton Flying Club. So let's talk a little bit about that. So you've been with Brampton for a long time. You started out actually working with me at the pilot shop many moons ago. And tell us about how you progressed from that job to where you are now. And tell us exactly what the job is and your title here at Brampton Flying Club.
Sure. Well, my title now is airport administrator as well as the assistant to the general manager. And I also just by chance got the job at the pilot shop when I first started my license. I was shopping for, supplies in the pilot shop, and the
Right.
manager at the time, maybe, I don't know if he asked me or maybe I asked him, are you looking for a job? And then I just got a job at the pilot shop. And then soon after started working with you. And then again, I was still in university then, finishing off my degree. And Rob Carney came to me and mentioned how Julie had a job opening. I didn't even know about it because I was just, kind of coming to do my
Right.
work and then going to school and whatever. And he told me to apply, and I did. I had an interview with Julie. It was amazing on both ends, like just our chemistry and what we talked about. And so I took the job as the airport administrator I don't know, maybe like a few
years,
months
yeah.
after you and I started working together. And my job since then has just progressed to different things, dealing with memberships, hangars, and tie downs, doing audits, health and safety committee, dealing with airport day, and just, here and there. I generally try and help anyone in the management team to do whatever they need to do.
So you're kind of a jack of all trades here, to be honest.
I tried to be.
Yeah, there's a lot of responsibility. A lot of the job you do certainly is.
Well, it's funny because I know a lot of the members' names and met before, like being here 15 years and, renewing memberships for 15 years.
Right.
I know the names. Like if someone comes up to me and tells me their last name, I could tell them their first name because I've been here for so long, but never have I met them.
Yeah, well, I think that's true for a lot of us, actually.
Yeah.
The members certainly have their own areas that they are, and sometimes you'll see them in the restaurant. And
Yeah. So, but
that
it's
sort of
nice
thing.
when it happens. Like, oh,
Yeah,
I
absolutely,
even
yeah.
emailed people for years and then don't meet them till a long time
Till
later.
renewal time,
Yeah.
when they're coming back. Exactly. So, Nancy, you are the airport administrator here, so you deal with memberships, but you also deal with some of the operational aspects of the airport for people who are thinking about bringing their planes here. Unfortunately, we're out of hangars right now. We had some available, but they've all been taken. Maybe we'll look at that again in the future. But for people who want to bring their airplanes here, either just for a visit or permanently from another location, what's the best way to do that? Do we have tie downs available? That sort of thing?
Yeah, the hangar demand is pretty big right now, so we don't have hangars available. We do have a hangar wait list. So if you are looking, we could put you on our hangar wait list.
Oh, there is a wait list.
It is
again.
about 20 plus people, but
Oh, really?
you can add your name if you'd like. When hangars become available is such a we don't know exactly when it'll happen because it's not just on our end, it's when we know people are leaving, and that can happen at any point. So you could put your name on the hangar wait list and see how it goes, but there usually isn't too much movement on the hangar end.
Not a lot of changeover than that. No.
No. Tie downs we always have available. If you are just looking to stay for an evening, that's something you would deal with Flightline. So
Right.
they have nightly ramp fees that they would charge you. And then if you're looking for, a permanent tie down or a few months to have your plane parked here, that would be me. You would contact me to get that arranged. You would need to be a member as well to have an airplane parked here. If you're looking for some information or you want to have your airplane parked here, you can contact me at nancy@brandfly.com. And that's Nancy with an I.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Nancy, and for your time. I know you're very busy. Always enjoy working with you, and hopefully you'll be working with us here for a long time to come.
Thanks, Richard.
Thank you. You have a great weekend.
You too.
Take care.
Bye.
So, a special thank you to all of our guests who came on the podcast for February. We have a great lineup for you next month as well. We have a Air Canada pilot coming in to talk about his career and his history here at the Brampton Flight Center. As well, we'll also have our regular segments, our Meet the Staff Members segment, and a few other interesting interviews coming up in March. We look forward to, again, some better weather in March for flying here. And hopefully spring will arrive sooner than later. Thank you, everyone, for tuning into the podcast today, and we'll see you next time.
Attention passengers, we've now reached our destination. We hope you enjoyed the flight and have a nice day.